It has always been possible, well, for years, it has been possible in the results program to draw not just the results at face value, but also to draw comparative results, either as a difference or a quotient of a base element or a base scenario. So you might say, what's the MPV in scenario 3 compared to scenario 1 as a difference? Or you might say, or it could be, how much does resource 3 cost as a multiple of resource 1? Things like that. So you can do the same thing in STEM 7.5. And so to take the simplest of those, the scenario delta, I go graph, draw new, and let's say I was actually going to do the MPV, so I'd select not DSL access, but I'd select network, and as a result I would want to pick MPV, and then for my scenarios it might be, let's not have that one, I might have all of these scenarios, and I might want to say, actually no, not those ones, it would be better to have, I might have all of the dual scenarios. I might want to say, I want to see the other ones compared to the base. And so what you do is down here, we pick the base element and we say we want dual base as the base. And for the operation, we say we want it to be a difference. And you'll see that down here, it's now specifically saying difference versus dual base. And it summarizes that here so that even when you're back on the elements tab or on the results tab, you can still see what that comparison is going to be. And I've had operating charge selected from before. Let me get rid of that. And basically, if I draw that graph, then it's going to be like this. And basically, here I have network MPV. It is 3 scenarios, none, all, or just video, all compared to the dual base. And so you can see that the dual all is better than dual base, and the other ones are less good. That's a familiar piece of functionality, and you can also do a quotient in a similar way. You just go with the same thing, draw new, and you'd say network MPV, and here you just pick a different operation. So, oh, it's not enabled. Okay, let's try changing this. So dual base, now it's enabled, a little bug there. And so you just pick quotient and you draw the graph, and then you'd see the MPV of the other scenarios as a quotient of the base one. Nothing too complicated. And you probably saw what I'm about to tell you in passing, which is there are some new options. So I can also do draw new, network MPV, and for my scenarios, pick this again, so the other bit's enabled. There are 2 new options, the first one of which is a proportional increase, and this is going to say what is none minus base as a proportion. So it's basically, it's a quotient minus 1. And so I draw the graph, and basically you see this in percentage terms, and the answer is it's quite a lot. I think that's right. The answer is that it's massively different, and this is just a poor example because MPV is going 0, so it's not a very good comparison here. And the last one is, I think, same network MPV scenarios, and the other one is, picking dual base again, the other one is a proportional decrease, and it's just the other way around. It's taking each of the scenarios, none, all, or just video, dividing them by base, and then subtracting 1, but it's actually 1 minus it, so that it has the opposite sign. And basically, the proportional increase is the logical one, but you can see that if you expect all things to be a decrease, then you might want to actually call the graph what is the decrease and think of the numbers in a positive sense. And actually, we haven't done it yet, but I can see that you might arguably even want to think about having the opposite sense for a difference. Anyway, we haven't done that yet. So those are the new options, and as well as those new options, there's another thing which you can do now which is new, which is you can also, as well as picking a base scenario or a base element, which you can do over here, another thing you can do which is new is you can pick a base result. So let me first of all remove the base scenario so that we don't get confused. So over here in the results, I currently only have one result. So actually I'm going to back up let's do something different actually. So let's remove that. We could probably do with a clear all button, couldn't we? So here I'm going to pick a service instead, and we'll have DSL access, and we'll have several results. So let's use the filter. So we'll have operating charge, operating costs, operating profit, and then let's have revenue. And basically, I can choose, no, not rental revenue, I meant revenue. I can pick revenue, and this is a common choice. I can pick revenue as a base. And I could say as a quotient. And scenarios, let's just have the working model for now. So we can have these three results as a proportion of revenue for that particular service. Draw the graph, and basically here we have, it's not a very nice looking graph, but what you have is operating charge as a proportion of revenue is a bit higher than 1. Operating costs, oh, actually, there's a lot in this, 100. That's a very big proportion. That's why it's so negative. To check that. Operating costs as a proportion of revenue, and then operating profit is actually very negative because it's making a big loss. So that's new, the ability to do that. Previously, you had to have made a derived result that made those comparisons previously. Now, so far, I carefully showed you a base scenario. I implied doing it for a base element, and I showed you that you can now do a base result. Apart from results being new, that functionality is basically familiar. What you can also do, which you definitely couldn't do before, is to have more than one base. So I can also do the following. I could do something like a draw new, and I could have, let's say I'm going to have several services. So I can have DSL access and WiMAX access, and I could make DSL access a base, and then for my results I'll keep it simple. I'll just go back to having 1, and then for my scenarios I could have, let's get rid of that one, I could have, let's have these, and I could have a base scenario 2, and let's just look at this. So I'll say dual base and make that the base. And this time I'm going to put this as a difference. And what we're saying is we're doing comparison difference compared to DSL access revenue. Okay, I think I've left revenue in by mistake. And so the reason we're showing this here is precisely because you can't see the other tabs. So we go back to the results tab, and indeed I left that in by mistake. That's useful. So basically where I was, what it's telling me is we're going to be plotting a difference compared to DSL access the element, but also specifically DSL access in the dual base case. And if we draw the graph, what do we get? So we have 6 lines, and the scenarios are dual none, dual all, and dual just video. And something's gone wrong because I was expecting this to be 2 elements, whereas it's showing me the result name twice. Okay, so something's not quite right there. But anyway, the idea is that you will be looking at one element in one particular scenario as the comparison, and basically your comparisons are the other elements in the same scenario. I'm sorry, the other elements in each of the other scenarios. Now, this is a bit hard to get your head around, so a picture will be useful, which I'll jump to in a minute. So here's my picture. No, not that. The picture is here, and it's this slide. No, it's not. Yes, it is. No, it's not. It's this slide. And basically, if you imagine a particular slice where we've got several results and several elements, then in STEM 7.4 you could only do what I would call an edge comparison, where you would pick, for example, a base element, and then you would have, for each result, you would compare the other elements against that element for each of the different results. But in STEM 7.5 you have the option to nominate not just this element as a base, but you could pick that element as a base and also this result as a base, in which case you'll have 4 rather than 6 series on the graph, and it will be the other elements and the other results, so element 2 capex compared to element 1 revenue, or as in my example in the results program I was looking at it as different elements and different scenarios compared to a specific element and specific scenario. You just need to think about that a bit for that to really sink in, but the words hopefully convey it quite effectively. One base means an edge comparison because it's only in one dimension, whereas multiple bases are comparing back to a corner, and that's in 2 or more dimensions. So to control all of this, there are 2 comparison controls. So come back to the dialog, and in each tab you have a base, because you can pick a separate base for, in fact, each of these different tabs. So you can have a base element, you can have a base result, and you can have a base scenario. Whereas there is only one operation, and that's because we're never envisaging anything more complicated than a particular result for a particular element, scenario, and result compared to one other particular result. So it will always be a difference or a quotient or a proportional difference or whatever. And as I say, because of the ability to select bases in more than one tab, so we will then report across here if there are any other ones. And so if I have picked dual base as the base here, then if I'm in the results tab and if I've picked an operation, because it seems to be forgetting that, then if I've got an operation, then it will tell me, it'll summarize here all of the dimensions in which I've actually got a base. And so at the moment it's just dual base for the scenarios, which is selected here. But if I pick a revenue as a base, then it'll say versus revenue and dual base. And if I pick an element too, so it will be a 3-dimensional corner selection. It's a bit difficult because I've only got one element. So if I go and pick DSL axis as well, and then make DSL axis a base, then in principle I can draw a graph of the difference of anything else compared to the revenue for DSL access in the dual base scenario. So again, many options, not all of which you're likely to use, but some of which you'll probably find very useful in certain circumstances.